Hello there. Be in no doubt, dear viewers, the UK Armed Forces, from the nuclear deterrent downwards, is being wound up. It's happening right in front of our eyes, and the reason is obvious. Oh yes, our UK Armed Forces, as an independently operating unit dedicated to the defence of these islands, are being decommissioned. And the main tool being used to achieve this is the dwindling number of Armed Forces personnel. Because fewer personnel means you can only operate fewer aircraft, fewer tanks, fewer artillery pieces, fewer ships and fewer submarines and fewer drones. The rest need to be mothballed and decommissioned, while far fewer military orders are placed for new kit. And we're now at the point where the UK government has just announced to the world that we don't have a sufficient number of fully qualified and suitable serving senior officers available to run our nuclear deterrent. Yes, there's an advert on LinkedIn for a Rear Admiral to take the post of Director of Submarines to lead the Force Generation of Capabilities, SSN, that's nuclear-powered submarines, and SSBN, that's nuclear-powered submarines with nuclear ballistic missiles, for operations to meet operational and contingent plans. And the post is open to all qualified serving Royal Navy Reserve and former regular Royal Naval personnel at the rank of captain or above. It's also open to the warfare, logistics and engineering branches. What's happened to the Royal Navy appointment system and succession planning? Are we saying that there are no serving RN submariners of the rank of captain or above across the warfare, logistics and engineering branches that are good enough for this job? It's not like we don't have enough senior officers, is it? Admirals always outnumber the amount of ships we have. And that's done on purpose to ensure we have a command structure available should we need to quickly conscript. This doesn't bode well for a fast reaction to a sudden threat, does it? Now, being a former Royal Navy Lieutenant Commander myself, I do know the odd thing or two. And I've also been involved with submarines and the nuclear deterrent. The first thing I'll point out is that the RN hierarchy has access via the pensions and reserve systems to the names and addresses of all the qualified and suitable personnel out there. They already know who they are. Surely a simple in-confidence letter could have been sent out to them. They do not need LinkedIn. Remember, this advert isn't for wide dissemination to look for non-qualified civilian candidates. They're not looking for former Marks and Spencer or Rolls-Royce execs. This is an in-house Royal Navy search for a suitable candidate. The public did not need to know about this. But the government chose to put this out there in the public domain via the Royal Navy's LinkedIn account, with all the inherent security question marks it raises. They obviously want people to know they have personnel problems high up in the command structure, or at least to think we have such problems. This is how the nudge system works. And we've been hearing for months, if not years now, that the UK Armed Forces have recruitment problems. Ben Wallace, the former Defence Secretary, recently said Generation Z was not enlisting. So why no massive recruitment drive with wage increases and better terms of service? Right now we face defence challenges in Ukraine, at the heart of Europe, in the Middle East with Israel versus Hamas, and now Russia-backed Venezuela is itching to invade part of its neighbour, the former British colony of Guyana, to take control of a huge offshore oil field. It's already put 6,000 troops on standby on the border. And on that latter one, all the UK can do is send a lone, almost unarmed gunboat to patrol off the Guyana coast. Gunboat diplomacy at its worst. We've now got a 67 million strong UK population, the largest ever. all paying loads of tax, or so we're told. We should therefore have the people and the money to deal with this. But all we keep hearing about is low service pay and substandard service accommodation that can't even be offered to the dinghy arrivals. Where is the political will to address this gaping hole in our nation's security? Well, the truth is, there is a political will out there. But that political will is devoted to the reduction in capability of our armed forces to the point it cannot operate to defend the UK. A reduction to the point that we are forced by necessity to go all in with the EU defence system. Be in no doubt the dismantling of the UK armed forces is central to the new Europe they are actively helping the European Union to forge, as well as a large piece in the reversal of Brexit jigsaw. So expect to hear more of this sort of thing in the coming months. Remember that pro-EU former UK civil servant, now Lord MacDonald, who has advised us to hand over our seat on the UN Security Council to the European Union and give up the nuclear deterrent? Well, that may be closer than we think, because the sensible but treasonous solution that would be put forward by our political masters would be to merge the French and UK nuclear forces. That would be the start. Everything else would flow from that. It would be advertised as a French-UK joint operation based on our shared defence needs. But because the French are in the EU, it won't be long before the whole thing is under the direct control of the EU Commission. You can see it coming a mile off. But that would also entail handing over intelligence from the likes of GCHQ and Five Eyes to at least the French and possibly the EU too, meaning Russia would be on the distribution lists. Now, one of the recruitment problems we do have is the whole woke setup. Not only have our youngsters been force-fed huge dollops of hate the UK at every stage of their education, the largest demographic, or more specifically the males of the largest demographic in the country, are also being actively pushed away, either by the current woeful recruitment process or by the promotions process, with the white males being the back-of-the-queue fodder. The armed forces has become just another route for tick-boxing the right sort of people to the top. Something that leads many people to think that maybe the LinkedIn ad was needed because all the available RN personnel were too male, stale and pale for the modern Navy. But the fact that the LinkedIn ad is only open to people the RN already knows about sort of puts that little theory to bed. Unless they do already have a fully woke, suitable candidate in mind, but that candidate is not professionally qualified. So the recruiters have to prove that they've jumped through all the hoops before appointing someone who ticks the woke boxes but is very professionally unsuitable. If woke is at the heart of this, then that would be the most likely scenario. Or maybe a French Rear Admiral would somehow pop out of the woodwork. Now, there is another scenario, of course, that with the recent bubbling around the issue of Scottish nationalism and the lack of another site to replace the Faslane naval base, we might be on the verge of just taking the easy option and ditching the deterrent completely. And that's something that would diminish both NATO and the UK's world standing. But our civil servants would be over the moon. More money for woke. Either that or the establishment is hoping that artificial intelligence will quickly come up with a whole new and cheap method of deterrence. Now, the Ramonas out there will be ecstatic to hear about the demise of the UK armed forces, as it would almost certainly deliver a joint European army under EU control. But that also diminishes our foreign policy clout, to the point that becomes joint as well. And with foreign policy goes international trade policy. We would be relying on the EU to once again forge our trade deals, hoping we got some crumbs from the table. And then there's the matter of our overseas territories, like Gibraltar and the Falklands, to consider. Any UK forces on Gibraltar would be de facto EU forces, so the EU would want control there. Ditto the Falklands. And no doubt a quick EU-Argentine defence pact would be formed to defend the South Atlantic. You get the idea. All this may sound far-fetched to you, but now think a year ahead and envisage how much of what I've suggested would be eagerly signed up to by a momentum-fuelled Labour Party. At the end of the day, our armed forces are facing collapse and being made totally inadequate for the job required. And that is a political decision taken at the highest levels. In short, it is treason.